Welcome to the Scottish Rite Journal Podcast, an audio presentation of the Scottish Rite Journal, brought to you by the Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite, Southern Jurisdiction, Mother Supreme Council of the World. This week's article is Masons and Friends from Far and Wide Celebrate Rededication of the George Washington National Masonic Memorial's Cornerstone by Brother Maynard Edwards, 32nd degree, KCCH, and comes from the May-June 2023 issue of the Scottish Rite Journal. Shortly after 4 p.m. on February 20th, 2023, the bagpipes began to play on the steps of the George Washington National Masonic Memorial in Alexandria, Virginia. Despite a slightly overcast sky, roughly 2,000 Masons from Grand Lodges all around the world, having paraded earlier that afternoon through the streets of Old Town Alexandria, gathered around as illustrious Kenneth G. Nagel, 33rd degree, past Grand Master of California and President of the George Washington National Masonic Memorial Association, opened officially the ceremonies of the rededication of the memorial cornerstone. Seated on the steps were dozens of Grand Masters and other dignitaries, including former Virginia Governor James Gilmore, Dr. Douglas Bradburn, President and CEO of George Washington's Mount Vernon, and Alexandria Mayor Justin Wilson, among many others. After an invocation delivered by Brother Seth Lyons, 32nd degree, stepping in for his father, Dr. Kenneth Lyons Jr., 33rd degree, Grand Cross, Grand Chaplain of the Scottish Rite Southern Jurisdiction, and a presentation of colors by the Heroes of 76, the Pledge of Allegiance was led by Right Worshipful Brother MacArthur Myers, the first African-American member of the George Washington National Masonic Memorial Association and current Grand Historian of the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Virginia. Following remarks from several of the dignitaries, the Grand Lodge of Virginia, Free and Accepted Masons, presided over by Most Worshipful Donald E. Strahl, 32nd degree, KCCH, Grand Master of Virginia, proceeded with a reenactment of the cornerstone laying ceremony that originally took place on November 1st, 1923. As the events opened, brothers from Fredericksburg Lodge No. 4 prepared an altar in the Master's fashion, the altar having been specially placed at the bottom of the giant steps leading to the memorial. After this, the Grand Lodge officers, in full regalia, descended the steps and took their ceremonial places, surrounding a specially made cornerstone replica, the original stone, of course, still being in use. Most Worshipful Strahl opened the ceremony in the traditional form, after which George Washington National Masonic Memorial Association President Kenneth Nagel stepped forward to request formally that the Grand Master dedicate the cornerstone in due and ancient form. In keeping with Masonic custom, a cavity was made in the cornerstone to contain material items of significance to the time period in which the stone was laid. Most Worshipful Strahl ordered this done, and the Grand Secretary and Grand Treasurer placed a small, sealed wooden box inside the cavity of the stone. Then, with 3 raps of the gavel, calling all in attendance to attention, the Grand Master, flanked by the Senior and Junior Grand Wardens, approached the stone. 3 craftsmen were ordered to spread symbolically the mortar upon the place where the stone would be laid. They then symbolically lowered the stone into place in 3 distinct motions. As this was done, the Grand Master ordered those in attendance to give public grand honors with each lowering of the stone. Senior Grand Warden Right Worshipful Gary Huffman, 32nd degree, KCCH, with the proper jewel of his office, tested the stone to see that it was level. Having found it so, Junior Grand Warden Right Worshipful Matthew Zamoski, 33rd degree, applied the plumb, the jewel of his office, to the stone to see that it was plumb. Finally, Most Worshipful Strahl, using the Master's square, tested the stone and found it to be square. The many Grand Masters present, having each been given a ceremonial trowel, were invited to stand and symbolically spread mortar on the stone in concurrence with Grand Master Strahl. Next, the ceremony of consecration with corn, wine, and oil proceeded, denoting the traditional associations of plenty, health, and peace. Illustrious Allen W. Atkins, 33rd degree, Grand Cross, past Grand Master, and SGIG in Virginia, presented the corn of nourishment, which was then placed on the stone by Deputy Grand Master of Virginia, Jack K. Lewis, 32nd degree, KCCH. Then the wine of refreshment was brought forward by illustrious James D. Cole, 33rd degree, past Grand Master of Virginia and Sovereign Grand Commander of the Scottish Rite, Southern Jurisdiction. The wine was then poured onto the stone by Senior Grand Warden Gary Huffman. Finally, the oil of joy was placed on the stone by Junior Grand Warden Matthew Zamoski, after its having been presented by past Grand Master Clifford A. Parker, 33rd degree. After the consecration ceremony, the Grand Master of Virginia then stepped forward to finish the work by giving solid taps on the gavel to the stone on all sides. The working tools then were collected, and the Deputy Grand Master presented them to the ceremonial architect, Paul Keegan of Hibernia Masonry, after which Grand Marshal Philip Rhodes gave proclamation that the cornerstone had been laid in accordance with all the ancient customs of the craft. The Grand Chaplain offered a closing prayer, and the Grand Lodge officers soon after retired. By all accounts, the day was a rousing success, starting with the parade and finishing with the flawless Cornerstone ceremonies. Both the parade and the Cornerstone ceremony were streamed live, allowing thousands of people around the world to view the events. Video streams are available on the George Washington National Masonic Memorial's website at gwmemorial.org/pages/cornerstone. As an added feature to this Scottish Rite Journal podcast, I had the privilege to speak with Brother Maynard regarding his article. Hope you enjoy it. We seem to have the fun part of the whole day. That's my opinion. We had the fun part of the whole day. So my first question is multi-parted. How many parades have you covered in the past? What made you want to cover this one? And had this parade ever been covered in a live stream or on TV in its entirety before?
So in terms of covering parades for the Scottish Rite or for Freemasonry, I have covered, and I'm going to use air quotes when I say covered, one other parade. Is that I did a live stream from sort of inside the parade for the Mid-Atlantic Shrine Parade a number of years ago. And I don't recall what year, probably 2014 or 15. I was riding in the parade with my shrine unit, which is a big rig. So we drive these little mini tractor trailers. And I basically set up a camera and live streamed direct to Facebook. So it was live streamed, but it was certainly not a multi-camera, parade coverage and what you'd be used to for the, one of the Thanksgiving Day parades that you might see on television. So never done that before. And honestly, up until the moment we started doing it, I was not 100% sure it was going to work. I was emotionally and professionally prepared to fail at that. And I had you hear that when the astronauts first went to the moon, Richard Nixon has letters that were already written and a speech already written just in case the whole thing went sideways. So I was kind of ready with every excuse I needed, the internet was bad, or, George Washington was mean to me. I mean, all kinds of whatever I needed to, because, there were a lot of people watching this thing and it had been a really challenging thing to get sorted out. But when we got there and it was actually working, it became really fun because at that point, because one of the big things we were concerned about was, yes, the internet connection.
Well, yeah, explain that one real quick because.
So we were using all mobile devices. So at no point in that broadcast did we have a solid connection to the internet, like by a cable. And when you're doing a live broadcast, when we live stream things from inside the House of the Temple, when we live stream the biennial session, and any of the other things that I live stream, I've live streamed the Grand Lodge of Maryland installation, the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania's installation, and a lot of other things. You want a hardwire connection to the internet. You don't want to trust that to wireless stuff, because if something goes sideways, things interfere with wireless things all the time, and you don't want that. We had no way of doing that, but by dumb luck, the place where we posted up was directly beneath a 5G cell tower. So we were within 1.5 feet of a 5G connection the entire day. So we had probably one of the rip-roaringest, fastest connections of anybody because, proximity matters. And,
for sure.
And we were there and soaking up as much bandwidth as we could. So, and the device that we use to connect allows us to connect several cameras, so once we were there and we got that set up, it became a lot more fun. But the other thing was we had no electricity to power things. Everything had to be battery powered. So I had I went to Walmart and bought one of those giant things that you can jumpstart a car with. I went and got one of those that we could plug into if we had to. And everything I had 10 different batteries. I went to one of those survivalist websites and got like a bunch of solar powered cellular chargers.
Yeah.
I had a bunch of those. So we could stay, and none of that ever really became necessary. All the batteries lasted for, the time that we thought they would. So we were in good shape, but I was fully prepared for total catastrophe, and it ended up working. So it ended up being a lot of fun, but never done anything to that degree. Now I've been the grand marshal of some parades when I did radio back, 10, 15 years ago, where you'd be the guy at the booth talking about the parade as it went by, but that was for the crowd, never a live stream. So this was a whole new thing.
Do you know if it had ever been live streamed or on local television before?
Not in its entirety. There had been portions of it had been live streamed. There had been the local newspaper there in town, whose name I can't recall. They were there and they said that this was their first attempt at fully live streaming it. People had done little, drips and drabs of it here and there, but never in its entirety from start to finish. And this was the longest that parade has been in a number of years.
And aside from the hardware type of thing, and also from weather, what makes covering a parade difficult?
Well, it's sort of a living, breathing thing. You don't know exactly what's going to happen. That's the biggest issue, is that, at any moment in time, something could just completely go sideways. I mean, you're talking about hundreds, if not thousands of people in a moving line. At any point in time, if the one guy out front hangs a left instead of a right, the whole thing is, there's issues.
Well, yeah. And we saw some of that potentially too happen with I forget what group it was, but they were driving the mini Corvettes and they were doing little tactical maneuvers. And it was like, oh, you guys are potentially going to wreck this entire thing and someone's going to go flying in seconds.
Yeah. Yeah. And you'll see that in a lot of parades. There's a lot of times when the Shriners, and I say this as a Shriner, where if you're driving in one of those units, you get a little overexcited or a little overconfident in your maneuvering ability. And believe it or not, I've lost control of a Shrine parade car. I was in the Mayor's Parade in Baltimore, which comes down a street in town, Roland Avenue, and it's a giant hill. And the miniature big rigs don't really have brakes. And so at some point, if you're not real careful about how you keep that thing under control, if you pick up any speed at all, you're kind of at the mercy of gravity for a little bit. And
I guess you can't Fred Flintstone it very well.
Yeah, well, you really have to. And so I've done that. So it's not difficult to lose control of one of those little vehicles. So, but that said, the other big challenge is the audio, because it's such a noisy environment. Everything from the crowd to the bands to, there's always somebody who's got some souped up, 68 Mustang that, no muffler anywhere on it. And when he presses that pedal down, you can hear every one of those horses.
Oh yeah.
And that just rips a microphone to pieces. So you really have to figure out how to deal with the ebb and flow of the noise and take your chances with when to talk and when not to. Because you don't want to be in the middle of why did the chicken cross the road? And all of a sudden there's this loud. Yeah. That's one of the more challenging aspects of it as well.
So what about this parade really stands out to you? And I guess, there's a million different reasons why a parade would stand out to anyone. Some of it's age. Some of it is they look for something in particular, like a Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade with huge floats. Is it because the community is still heavily involved in it? Is it because so many Masons come out to represent from different areas of the world? Because they were literally from all over the world.
In my understanding, this is the largest parade dedicated to George Washington in the country in general. And in this past year, with the anniversary of the cornerstone laying of the George Washington National Masonic Memorial, that is what brought Masons from around the world. So you're not going to see this again next year in this same way. Will we cover it? Perhaps, but you won't see as many Masonic groups because there is not that element of celebrating that Masonic anniversary, so to speak. the thing that stuck out to me about it were the number of Masons from countries other than the United States and from places other than North America that came to be a part of this and honor George Washington. He's not a hero in Sweden, and yet they sent people. He's not a hero in Spain, and yet they sent people. And it was a testament to those fraternal ties that all Masons share. That combined with the sheer volume of brothers from around the world, and also the number of people who knew who we were and what we were doing because they had been watching, they had been anticipating, they had been, there were people who were watching the parade while they were in the parade on their phones, and they came by and they talked to us. And,
you had plenty of those for sure. It
was a really kind of a cool thing as brothers went by, they would duck out and shake our hands and things like that. So that was a lot of fun because you're not going to get to see that ever again.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And you sort of answered my last question that I actually have on here. Do you plan on doing this again, or was it just for one occasion? I could certainly see that, because it won't have the pomp and circumstance that this year's had, going forward, and will long since be dead once that anniversary comes up again.
Well, that anniversary, but in 2033, presumably, at the anniversary of the opening, because the building between Cornerstone laying and the opening of the building was full 10 years. So, there will be that to look forward to in 10 years. But if the memorial, or if the town, or if anyone, asks us to stream that parade again, we'll make every effort to do so. Presuming that we're available to do it. I did learn a lot of things. We don't have to be quite so paranoid about power. I will remain paranoid about internet connection.
Well, as long as we can get to that one spot that we were at, get there early enough.
And that was sheer dumb luck. We didn't even know until we were like midway through the broadcast. The guy who was next to us streaming from the newspaper said, "Well, you're standing right under a 5G connection. That's why I'm here." I was like, I had no idea why, because it's disguised as a lamppost.
Yeah, exactly.
If you look at it, you see like the Verizon logo and things on the side of it. But so I don't know that we'll do that, but we're certainly trying to be the leaders in bringing this type of thing to the brothers. Not everybody can get to Washington, D.C. or to Alexandria or wherever to be a part of these things, but they still want to witness them. And if the pandemic has taught us anything, it's that we really can use technology to stay connected and feel like we're a part of something, even if we can't physically be there. It's not exactly the same. Certainly the men who marched in that parade had a much better experience than the folks who just watched it. But the folks who watched it still got to experience it on some level in a way that they would not have previously. It's one of the reasons why we were so eager to help out our brothers in the Knights Templar and in the Grand Commandery and stream their Easter service. That Easter service has been going on for decades and decades, and it has never been live streamed. So brothers from other parts of the country who don't have the ability to travel to the George Washington National Monument, the George Washington National Masonic Memorial, they've only ever seen still photographs of it. They've never actually been able to see and hear the thing in action. And for us to be able to bring that to them this past Easter Sunday, it really, I think it's not only is it important, but I think it shows to other Masonic organizations, other Grand Lodges, other Masonic bodies that, you should take a little extra effort and see if you can do this kind of thing for your special events so brothers around the world can be a part of it. Because every Grand Lodge has something that they do that's really unique and really special, that it would be great if they could share it. And, I think we're demonstrating that not only can it be done, but maybe it should be done.
So the crew that we had that day was you, Brother Chris Ruley, Brother Sennett Foudy, and myself. And we were all operating our own little stations. I was manning the one hardwired camera, panning back and forth between the parade and the parade stand and stuff like that. Brother Sennett was operating, camera angles, seeing who got what attention when.
And he did a nice job. That's a tricky thing to do.
Sure, absolutely, for sure. And you and Brother Chris Ruley were offering commentary, and you've been in radio and television for a long time, but you seem to play the Fred Willard color commentary type to Brother Ruley's straight man. I've known you for a long time, but I did want to know, was this intentional, or was this a little last minute entertainment idea?
Oh, I don't plan anything. I don't plan anything. Sure. It's just not in my nature to make it. You know the answer to that question before you asked. I don't, as a rule, I don't want to be locked into something. I want to sort of surf the wave of chaos, because I think in that there lies opportunity for discovery that you wouldn't have had you overplanned something. My plan was, I've been to parades before. I've seen how they're covered. I'm going to do that. And Chris, sometimes, first of all, I love Chris like he's my own flesh and blood. He's a dear, dear friend, and it's such a knowledgeable, smart Mason, and such a really lovely guy to work with. I don't have enough good to say about Chris, but he does take himself very seriously at times when he's on mic, and I can't resist messing with him.
Right.
The more serious he is, the more that 12-year-old boy comes out in me that I have to mess with him. And he's so good-natured about it, more good-natured than perhaps I deserve, is at some point he should just look at me, would you just shut up? And I fully expect that at some point, but actually probably he won't, because it's just not in his nature. But he is just, he is a lot of fun to work with. He's very knowledgeable. And the thing is, I can depend on him when we're doing these kinds of things to take the ball and run when necessary. If I have to step away and do something, it happened a few times during the Easter broadcast where a camera needed to be fixed, or this, that, or the other thing needed to happen, and I'd have to step away to handle that. And he would take the rest of it. So a lot of kudos go to him for his knowledge and his willingness to help us with these schemes. And he's always been foolish enough to say yes when we call on him. And I can't appreciate that enough. But at the same time, I just can't resist messing with him on mic when need be, or making him break up. And that's, but to his credit, he handles it with grace in all circumstances. Every once in a while, once the mics are finally closed, he'll look at me and just shake his head, or, say something else that I fully deserve. But he's a very smart guy. He's got some books and things coming out later this year. I hope people will add to their collection. He deserves a lot of credit for putting up with me and for all that he gives to the fraternity.
Like and share this article, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you wish to comment, please leave one, and as a reminder, hit the notifications bell. Any accompanying photographs or citations for this article can be found in the corresponding print edition. The Scottish Rite Journal is published by the Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite, Southern Jurisdiction, by the Supreme Council of the World. Mark Dreisenstock, 32nd degree, KCCH, Managing Editor. I'm your host, Matt Bowers.